Welcome to the Quantum Biology Collective podcast, where we break down the practical strategies of this emerging science, starting with healthy light habits and going wherever the quantum superhighway takes us. This is your host, executive and life coach Meredith Oak, with a quick reminder that podcasts are conversations, not consultations, and definitely not medical advice. We're here for informational purposes only. To follow up with our amazing guests, please do check out the show notes, and to stay in the loop with the QBC podcast, join our email list, also linked in the show notes. I sent this quote out in an email a couple weeks ago. It really resonated with a lot of you, so I'm going to read it here. It's by Neville Goddard, a New Thought author. Everything we do unaccompanied by a change of consciousness is but a futile rearrangement of surfaces. This applies to health tips as well, right? We can spend all our energy getting our light right, getting our food right, getting our strategies in order, doing the perfect exercise, doing all the right things in order to feel better. But if we don't allow those things to change fundamentally who we are and how we see the world, if we don't internalize what the health tips stand for, especially quantum health strategies, they're going to stay health tips, and they're not going to do the deep rearrangement required to enter the realm of health that we really want to be living in. We need to look at this as the whole thing. And I know a lot of you are with me on this. And we really get into it today with our guest, Heather Crimson, who is a former psychotherapist turned quantum health mentor. She actually left the field of psychotherapy in order to be able to offer her clients a full range of modalities that she was not able to do under her licensing with the psychotherapy world, right? And she really makes the point, and it's a point that Kelly Ritter also made a couple episodes ago. Definitely listen to that one as well, right? Heather also makes the point that the field of psychology does not understand at all that mitochondrial health affects our mental and emotional health, and that we cannot live in healthy attachment with the world around us, with the people around us, with ourselves, until we understand that and take care of it on all of the levels. So please enjoy my talk with Heather. You can find her at enlightenedmood.com. And before we dive in, please do visit bondcharge.com, our brand partners. I don't do a lot of brand partnering. I do get a lot of people reaching out, and it's usually a no. It's usually a no from me. But the companies that I know who have been featured on this podcast or who I do a brand partnership with, I know the founders. I know that they really care about making high quality things, and they know all the science, they know all the things. They're not just sort of marketing a gimmick, and because there's a lot of random stuff out there on Amazon. So bondcharge.com is one of those, and they reached out, and I'm really happy to be partnering with them. So please do visit their website, and when you check out, put QBC in the code, so you get 15% off. And if you don't already have one, I hope you have blue blocking glasses by now. If you don't, get those. If you don't already have a little red clip-on light, you can just clip it onto your book when you're reading in the evening, or carry it around like a flashlight. It makes it so easy to take care of your circadian rhythms without worrying about turning on bright lights, because you just have this little red portable light with you. It charges up in the wall, and then you can just take it, reading before bed, brushing your teeth, whatever. It's great. Highly recommend. And also, please do, if you're not subscribed, I know most of you are, I really appreciate it. Please do subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a big difference. And I always forget to remind you or ask you to do that. So do like, share, comment, send these episodes to people who you think might resonate with them. And we deeply appreciate it. And I deeply appreciate you. Enjoy this episode. Heather Crimson, welcome back to the QVC podcast. It's so good to see you again on here.
Nice to see you, Meredith. Thank you.
All right. So I really want to jump in. You have been, as we all are, continuing on your journey, weaving in different pieces. And so you have now been on a journey that's incorporating
the tenets of quantum biology, circadian health, as well as homeopathy, and of course, your background in somatic healing and psychology. So tell us about it. How's that all coming together?
Well, it's really interesting, the dynamic aspects of how the practices that you embrace affect your trajectory, right? So there's the day-to-day functioning, and then there's your overall sort of human development. And it can be subtle and it can be sometimes more obvious, but I think overall it's a lot more subtle, Meredith, because I sort of took a quantum leap. So I did a recent podcast and I was talking about how, and I'm going to talk more about it in social media, but the one thing that I was the most afraid of about that stems from, early trauma is being able to be just on my own, doing my own thing without having, any family support. Unfortunately, all my close family has passed, and kind of being this out in the world alone, right? Because I recently got divorced and I'm like, oh my God, here's the moment, because I'm in a new location and I wanted to come to a sunny place. So I happened to be able to move to Southern Utah. My father left me a house here and I'm like, oh, there's a lot of sun there all the time, year round, which is amazing, right? I know there's some negatives, but I'm here by myself, right? I'm developing community. I don't have any people who are really close to me. And so what used to happen is when I would have this idea of sort of leaving my refuge, if you will, right? The people I was with or I'm closest to, I would start to feel this panic and terror of collapse because my early history includes a lot of neglect. And so I would just be by myself, not knowing, like totally alone, like where is everyone? No one's there. And people don't understand that neglect is the hardest trauma to access, to heal, because it's just a big void. There's nothing really to work with. There's just that state of freeze and panic and terror. And so I know this is a lot for people to hear, but it's not that uncommon because, that happens out there. And I think I've been ashamed to talk about it because it's like, oh, what was going on in your family that things were so, bad off. And that's what happens when you have trauma and addiction, and that just repeats, generationally. So I thought
that's so interesting. I just want to talk a little more about your point about neglect and the void that it leaves. Because that is in the recovery community, whether it's from codependence or alcohol or drugs or gambling or whatever, it's like the language is often about filling a void.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
I also wanted just on the neglect topic, and listen, it's a fine line, right? Like we grow up, we take care of what needs to take care of. Our childhood was what it was. We want to be whole humans moving forward, but it's also helpful to really understand how our psyches were formed. So for the neglect piece, I think like my mind goes to like the parents who like don't feed you and don't, but there's also sort of like a benign neglect. Mm-hmm. Could you just talk about that for a minute where it's like, what is that?
Right. In those circumstances, like say with the clients I've had, it's like the parents are so busy, they're working either because they're just using the work as like a way to keep themselves going. They're high performing. They're very, it's a very serious career, whatever the case may be, right? Like they're really consumed by work, or they're consumed by their own unresolved trauma in the sense that they are using their own like substances, or, they're just really focused on all those activities. And so the child doesn't get that emotional attunement and really the time and the presence that they need from the parents' energy and care and love to form a secure attachment. So that in and of itself is going to create a chronic stress state for the child, right? And so that's kind of benign neglect. Like they have means, they're there, but they're not really attuned and present. And that's a huge thing that I think that we don't really realize how much stress that creates in the body for the child. And that'll manifest in health problems and relationship problems in their lives. Mine was actually my mom wasn't there. And there was food, but sometimes when she wasn't there, she was on the ball and then we didn't have food just in those moments. It was probably like a handful of times. But for me, it's like, oh my God, it's this huge imprint. But there's definitely degrees. I get your point. It's like there's a continuum of the impact and the seriousness, right? The severity of the situation. But even with the more subtle, like, well, we had everything. My parents were so hardworking. They I know they love me. There's a lot of kind of denial as a coping strategy that I've heard from what we would call the avoidant attachment style. I had a great childhood.
Yes.
But they are not able to take in love, to express their needs, right? They can't take in nourishment. They will not. It's way too risky to be vulnerable with emotion because the emotions were not allowed. Emotions, there was no place for them. They were messy. They were annoying, whatever, or they were even shamed for their emotions. So I think that's kind of more what you're talking about with the benign neglect. It's not about basic needs. It's about emotional needs.
Yes, exactly. And to not have people feel that they don't deserve to access this kind of healing because they weren't, starved and abused. Like there are still levels of need that, just as a, I don't know, society, we're learning, we're all in a learning process. So again, it's not to like blame and shame our parents. It's more just to be like, oh, okay, like in this phase of my development as a baby or as a young child, this is what happened and this is the outcome. And now there's something I can do about it if I choose to.
Right. And quantum biology and homeopathy and these kinds of energy approaches are, I think, key, because just to tie it back into where I'm at now, before I didn't have the sort of, we call it like the voltage needed in order to feel confident in trusting myself, that I literally would have the physical stamina to tolerate the amount of stress, but good stress, right? Like this is something I want, but it would still feel overwhelming, right? So in the attachment piece, it's really about the attachment piece and feeling safe in my skin, safe in the world, so other people are safe, right? When you have experienced some of these more serious things early on, it really instills this like high level of like, oh my gosh, am I safe in the world? And can I, even trust myself? And because there was not that stability that a child needs in order to just know that implicitly, like, it's fine. Like people don't even think about it when they have all that foundation, right? It's like, they can't relate to it. Because I've talked to people before and they look at me like I have three heads. I'm like, okay, I don't think I'll share anymore. Because they don't see how much it actually impacts the body and they have no frame of reference. So, but what allowed me, Meredith, to feel like I'm thriving now, even though things are stressful, it's like, oh my God, what am I going to do about this? And what am I going to do about the house and this and that, right? The what do we call it? The probate. It's like, all these things that can get really, like, they can be a lot to manage in addition to our day-to-day functioning and our health needs and just keeping it all going, right? And I just have a dog. Like, I don't know how you do it. Like, I don't have kids. It's like there's so many things to do a good job at, right? But what really helped me is because I have a history of chronic fatigue. I know you also had experienced that, but the circadian biology was what turned that around for me, right? That started to nourish me at the energetic level to help my body to feel like I could do more things. Because one thing I learned from Carrie is that she told me, I had a session with her last year. She said, you have mitochondrial damage from early trauma. And that never like occurred to me that way. I always thought, well, I'm not the most like hardy. I can't, run a marathon. I just don't have that kind of vitality. I can't miss sleep too many nights. And we're like, my spiritual mentor called me an orchid. I'm like, yeah, that fits. Yeah, I'm an orchid, because I just don't have that kind of like solidity as far as being able to endure that a lot of stress. And so, the circadian biology, when I started improving my circadian rhythm and I started to feel stronger, then my emotions would turn around, right? It's like my emotions tended towards more of neutral and positive. Whereas when your body feels bad and you don't have energy, the voltage is so low. No wonder your emotions and your thoughts they're awful, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, it's so true. And it's like, what I'm hearing is it's like, and I had this exact experience. Yeah. It's that foundational piece to do what needs to be done, whether it's something logistic or the next level of healing. It's like, we need to have mitochondrial function at a high enough level to support what we need to do next.
Yes.
And if we don't get that piece, we will get probably stuck.
Mm-hmm. Right. The inflammation, I realized how inflamed I was because of the poor mitochondrial function and the emotion. It's like a negative cycle. So the emotions happen because of all the things like social programming, early trauma, whatever, societal stuff, just the stress of life. And then that would fold into affecting my mitochondria. It probably affects the structure of water, right? How my water's hearing my inner world, so to speak, and reflecting that. I don't know, probably more to come on that from the people who are studying that, right? But, and then it's a vicious cycle. So then I have those thoughts, and then I make poor choices, or I don't do what I need to do, whatever, right? All that stuff, trying to interrupt the patterns that we get so stuck in about how we are showing up in the world. So that's the stuff. And then with homeopathy, that really works at the electron level, right? There's a couple studies by one of the main homeopaths in the world is George Vithoulkas, and he talks about how the homeopathic remedies, they actually help your electron function. So and I can't remember the details. I have to memorize that article, but I just glanced at it. But it actually works on your vital force that way at that level. And so I've been on a remedy, and the joke is like, oh, when you're on this remedy, you might leave your relationship. It's like, yeah, that's what happened. It's so funny. And the good news is we're still friends and we're still helping each other, right? So it doesn't need to be this bad thing. It's just like, okay, this isn't working for me anymore. And I honor you, and I have to honor me now and respect me. And I have the trust, right? I have the physical nourishment that I need from sunlight, from having deep rest at night with the blackout room and all the things, right? I have my must-haves so that I can feel good, because the more, Meredith, I go along this journey, the more obvious it is to me when things like, say, for example, this thing I ate or whatever, or I got to bed a little bit later, it's like, ooh, I can feel it. Whereas before I was sort of numb to all that. Like, you don't realize when you're so overwhelmed and inflamed, you don't even realize it, right? Like last night a lot of times I'll get tired right before it's dark. I'm like, I can't go to bed. It's light out, right? I need to stop that, because last night, because I had to reschedule with you, Meredith, I'm telling everyone, because I didn't sleep well when we originally were supposed to meet. And I thought, I'm not going to do that to myself. It's okay for me to reschedule. And I don't think you're going to care, because you're so nice, right? But last night I said, I'm so sleepy. And it's like 8:30, right? And I'm like, I'm going to bed. And I just fall right asleep. And when I go to bed, when I'm really tired like that, even if it's not dark yet, I sleep so much better. We don't listen to our body's cues. Speaking of somatics, right? We don't like to have to let the body dictate what we're doing. We want to do what's up here. No, I want to just read one more thing, or I want to hang out with my family, which of course that's so lovely. But then what happens, right? If my body's saying, hey, I really need this, but I don't honor that, and then I don't sleep as well. It's not a major difference. Sometimes it is, but I sleep so much better when I listen that way.
Yes. And it's those subtle cues from the body. And we've been so trained to ignore them, right? Yep. Like, get it done, keep going, move through it. And yet when we do listen to them, we have that much more energy to do all those things we had to push ourselves to do when we don't listen. Mm-hmm. And then there is that internal struggle. It's like, oh, but I really want to finish this book, or I really want it, but then if you listen to your body, like most of the time, then the times when you're like, okay, you know what, I'm going to do this other thing instead. Like we have the resilience for it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So let's circle back to your journey a little bit. So where are things at now? So you found that the circadian piece, the quantum piece, having correct light signals at the correct time, having adequate darkness at night, grounding, spending time outside during the day. So that sort of brought you to a level where you're like, oh, I'm actually available for more healing. Like, yep. I feel like I have, and it's funny. It's like it opens up. You're like, oh, I can do this now. Whereas when we're below the line, it's like, nope. And even as stuff comes up, I'm like, I will compartmentalize that. I do not have the resources to deal with it.
Yep.
Okay, so it sort of opened up, and then that led you to the next step, like homeopathy resonated, and then what happened?
Well, I look at it as the more nourished I am energetically from all the things you just mentioned, the more I can be in alignment with my truth of who I am. So it's really an unfolding process, like an organic unfolding process of your soul emerging, right? Then you get into more of the consciousness, like being aware of who you're being and being at choice, having the agency of choosing the life that you want. Because I mean, for so much of my life, and like a lot of people, we live in a state of reactivity where things are coming at us, and feeling like the belief, even if it's not in your mind up and running, that you're aware of, is that I don't have a choice. Like, for example, and I know this is almost sacrilegious to mention, but I think about, like you're saying, how sad it is that we don't have time for family enough. Like, a lot of people don't really have time that they should or would like to be spending with their kids, their partner, whatever, their extended family, hopefully. And because the rule is that I have to work so much, right? So it's like we get trapped in these modern living situations of having to perform, so to speak, and go against what it is that we really want to be doing. So, not saying that people shouldn't work, but and I know this gets dicey because it's like, oh, you have that privilege where you don't have to work as much or whatever. But I want to look at it from more of a spiritual perspective and a top-down perspective versus like the when people start getting, upset about that it's about privilege or not. It's about humanity. It's about who do we want to be as a species, right? What is our like common value and mission and goals? Is it about just having stuff, or is it about being able to have an experience that feeds our humanity, where we have time to rest, we have time to sleep, we have really high quality food that's not being rated by the government, that kind of stuff, that's clean. And we have time for family. We have time for joy. We have time for sex, whatever the case may be, to feel good about your human experience. Like, you think about animals, and I always think like, wow, so animals, like, I don't know about you, but I mean, I don't have a problem saying this, but sometimes I just want to tune out by watching cute animal videos on YouTube.
Jason and I do that all the time.
I love
it. He's got them in his feed. He's like, oh my God, we got to look at this one. And you just laugh. They're so funny. They're so funny. I'm like, look, the cat's kneading dough.
Oh, they're all so amazing, right? Or they're like the pig that's best friends with the horse or whatever it is, like, Oh, I love it. And so
or the babies hugging their cats.
Exactly. It's all, I saw one yesterday. It was the cow who goes on a jet ski. I mean, right? And his human father, it's like the cow's father. It's just so cool. But the animals are in the moment, right? They're in the experience. And then I think, well, but then they're vicious, right? Like, they have to deal with the reality of, right, the way that they live and all that. But what's the difference with humans? And so I think, okay, yeah, there's survival, there's intense stuff we have to deal with, but, and then it gets into the woo and the spiritual, but what is it? How do we want to be? Do we want to be able to enjoy ourselves and like the animals do and really be in the experience? And then you only have to get like, I don't know, rigid about it when it's like a life or death thing, We live as if it's always a life or death thing. Like, I gotta go to work.
And like, oh my God, we're 5 minutes late. Ah!
Exactly, right? Yeah. And our bodies perceive that. Our bodies experience that as it's sort of this life or death threat. I mean, not 100%, but it's still higher. And so that level of chronic stress, you couple that, like the way we've sort of manifested this modern living situation, you got the artificial lights, you got this high non-native EMF, you got shit food, you got no time, right? And then that's a ton of stress. And then you have not time for your relationship. So then your relationship suffers. No wonder people are so inflamed. No wonder people are getting cancer, right? And then there's the toxins in the environment. So you add all these stressors up and it's like, I don't know how people are still walking around. No, I'm just saying.
It's amazing. It is truly amazing what our bodies can take. Like, I look back at some of the things I put myself through and what I was doing and the level of trauma, the unresolved trauma mixed with all other, and I'm like, how am I still functioning? Our bodies are truly amazing to withstand all of this.
Which gives me
but
hope,
then
right?
The flip side of that is also to the point like that you said earlier, like, we don't notice it. Just feeling slightly numb and tired 100% of the time is like, well, that's just normal.
Right. I think the main paradigm shift needs to be that a couple things, like trusting our bodies, how resilient they are, that our bodies don't make mistakes, they're designed to heal, understanding our bioelectric nature, that we are intimately tied to the natural environment. We are part of that ecosystem, that we have to be able to get the inputs from the sunlight, the darkness, right, and connect to the earth's magnetic resonance in order to feel fully nourished and have things work okay, so that we can feel safe and our stress levels come down, so that we can have a clearer thinking and make choices that will continue to enhance our experience of being alive in this iteration. So it all ties together. Yes. So it's really important to think about all the small choices that one is making every day, especially from the mind and heart space, because I think that we can obsess about the physiological and not realize how much our thoughts, the nature of our thoughts, and then the emotional home that we live in is really affecting our biology.
Wow. It's a lot. And I love that you talked about the small choices, because that was a big thing for me when I started to understand sort of the nonlinear asymmetrical impacts of, a quantum view of things, right? Like, one small change done consistently can totally change the trajectory. Right. Like, I remember once I was talking to Jim Laird, and he's like, it used to be every Saturday the dads would mow the lawn with no shirt on. He's like, you add up all those Saturdays over a lifetime. Like, that's a lot of skin in the sun. It's a lot of UV exposure. And so you're like, oh, you know what? I'll pay someone else to do it. Or, whatever. We live in a way where the dads don't do that. You just take out that one seemingly insignificant habit, right? And it can have, cumulatively, it totally changes the trajectory. And on the flip side, you add one in. So what do you see when you work with people? Where do you see people, where do they like to start, right? Like, and how do you help people navigate where to start?
Well, if they're able to see the benefit of the circadian practices and understanding how that, it's the foundation, right? You have to be synchronized with the cycles of nature and the light and dark cycles in order to support your body's functioning and all the different processes. So I always start, I think, like many of us, right, with you have to be able to get early morning light. That's not negotiable, which again bumps up against, oh, well, what about work? And right? And I'm so busy. And so it's like, okay, well, this is your opportunity to see what is it that you want out of your life, because we can make a lot of excuses about that we don't have time or it's impossible, or you can get creative and try to see what is possible and take ownership of that. And so the morning light is essential in order to do so many things, as you know, with the inflammation, right, with setting our time clock and the suprachiasmatic nucleus, with balancing our hormones and neurotransmitters, with the UVA light, which it's only like an hour, honestly, right? It isn't like it's taking all morning. It's just this really critically important 60-minute. If you're really ill, it needs to be longer. So that's essential. So getting clients on board with that is the first order of business. And then blocking artificial light at night. So we have these bookends that are absolutely essential in order to enhance the circadian rhythm, support the mitochondrial function, which then downstream will help everything else. And so blocking artificial light at night, like I said, go to bed earlier, right? Start to listen to your body. It's developing that relationship with your body of understanding that it's working for you, not against you. Yes. Because if people get annoyed that they're tired or annoyed with whatever their body's doing, then we already are entering into that bad energy of an antagonistic relationship. And that's, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal, I think it's a really big deal. So we have to trust our bodies and making sure that you get the best sleep possible, because that's when all of your repair and restoration processes are happening. You're cleaning up your house with the autophagy and apoptosis, and the melatonin is going to be essential if you block the light at night to be able to do that. And then, so you can see how easily, if somebody isn't being able to do much of either of those in the morning and evening, things can go awry with the inflammation, and mental health issues are just a manifestation of that. Having inflammation in the brain, or all your hormones and neurotransmitters are out of balance, you're going to have some kind of mental health issues. And I was telling you before we got on about how Psychology Today, because it's a very common platform that psychologists or other mental health practitioners will advertise on, but they also put out articles and information about mental health, and they have a magazine. I never really liked the magazine, but whatever. And they've been talking about mitochondria being a key factor in mental health since 2017, but they're still in the biochemical model. And, what drugs can we make to help our mitochondria? And you see that a lot when you start to read the research, right? Even Martin Picard at Columbia, who's amazing. He does this, what does he call it? I forgot. It's something about psychobiotics or something like that with mitochondria and mental health. But even in some of his research, it's like, well, how can we use this to create some medications? It's like, really, people, is that all we're going to do is focus on the profit potential of sort of biohacking the body? That, I think, is a really big pitfall, because people want a quick fix, right? There's a lot of money to be made. And we, again, we're implicitly promoting this belief that our bodies are somehow not capable, they're broken, that it's not possible, which is total BS,
Yes. So there's so many things in there. I think even just the idea of mental health being connected to our mitochondria, right? Like we've, even for me, like I feel like I have a very holistic view, but when we're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I still have like that little mental health chunk as its own piece. And you do dialectic therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy or mindset work, which is, for me, was critical, but not the only thing. And so this idea that, in the food, people have been saying this for a long time, like what you eat affects your mental health. And now what we're saying is like the light signals are going to have a huge effect on your mental health. And I find people so resistant because they're like, well, it can't be that simple. And it's like, it just is. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it just is that simple. Change your light.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So it's interesting to me. So we'll use Psychology Today as the signifier for like mainstream psychology or mainstream medicine in general. And so it is now well established and very clear that mitochondrial function or mitochondrial dysfunction will have results across the board with our health, from cancer to depression to like whatever is going on, with the exception of a few rare genetic diseases. You can tie it back to dysfunctional mitochondria. Now, where is the mainstream psychology at with then taking it to the next step and being like, okay, and our mitochondria needs to be supported by optimized circadian rhythms?
I haven't found it. I mean, there's research out there, but that's in the halls of, the research labs and universities. I haven't seen, not that I've done an exhaustive search, but it tied with circadian rhythm, right, and light. I have only seen it. They talk about sleep. Okay, yes, sleep is so important. Make sure you're getting good sleep. But I haven't seen them take it to, and circadian rhythm is the first step to optimize so that your mitochondria function well. they'll talk maybe about insulin issues or cortisol issues, but there's a big glaring omission there about the circadian rhythm piece in the mainstream. Now, again, it's well documented in the research, you know that, but it isn't like coming out into the mainstream awareness. In, you know, when I'm saying that, I mean like into psychotherapists' offices. It's not out there, unfortunately. And I'm actually going to do an experiment. I had advertised on Psychology Today for many years as a couples therapist. So I did attachment-based couples therapy. I still have two couples left. But I'm pivoting to sort of cut down on the therapy part. But I do want to see what kind of response I'll get if I put an ad back up that's only like in a little short 15-minute video segment to do my, advertising that says, look, if you don't want to be in therapy a long time, if you want to get back to your high performing life and you want to ameliorate your anxiety and depression, this is the key. You got to focus on mitochondrial function and I can help you do that. So just book a session with me or whatever and just see what happens.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Yeah. Right.
You have to come back and tell us. Yes. Yeah.
So pitch it that way because there are people who don't want to have to go to therapy and they don't want to have to talk about all the things. And the truth is, here's the thing, Meredith, I had many clients over the last 20 years since I first started seeing clients who didn't get better the way that they wanted to because we didn't know that was probably the foundation of the problem. It wasn't about, gosh, I have all this unresolved family stuff or da 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 da. Why, it's their environment. So I sat with so many clients in my office that probably wasn't lit properly, right? Because it's going to be cozy and semi-dark. It was awful, right?
Okay.
Sitting all those years and just all the heaviness and people's misery. It's like, oh my God, let's check out this piece first before we then go to the next step of seeing what's left over that is unprocessed pain, unprocessed emotion that absolutely will compromise the energy in your body, right? In the fascia, in everything, being able to help your body function optimally because the communication is optimized. When you have a lot of compressed emotional, unprocessed emotions, right, that will impede the flow. And so I just think about, gosh, all these clients, but even if I presented it to the last few when I was still in my actual physical office, they're like, that's great, Heather. They like me. So they're going to be like, oh, that's cool. Let's get back to what's really important because that's some weird thing that you're always telling me these different things I could try, And it's not the right context because I didn't start with that. And that wasn't planted in their head. There's no buy-in. You have to have buy-in. Right. My only leverage is that they thought I was nice and they're like, oh, cool, whatever. And they might have bought a pair of glasses, but that was the extent of it. Right. So the reason I want to start this ad to do my experiment is if I lead with that. And if I say, look, here's these articles, I'm going to try to put them in the listing here, go read these. And I can show you how to do that because they're not going to get the circadian piece in anywhere else. Right.
Right. Because, it's like, that the mindset that we have is like, no, I'm here to talk about my pain.
Yes.
And like, there's no way through except to do that, which, as you were saying, is true sometimes. Right. And I'm just like reflecting on my own journey. And, I had a wonderful therapist. I only realized later how wonderful. I appreciated her at the time, but in hindsight, I'm just like, wow, I was really lucky. She was at the end of her career. So she'd been around the block like 8,000 times and just knew exactly the right amount of unconditional empathy, but also accountability. And I learned so much just from being in her presence and just by developing a relationship with her. I'd never had anything like that in my life. I was like, wow, I learned so much. However, I think that we are now that we know that we need to process our childhoods to a certain extent and we need to, repair or compensate for things that weren't there, as we talked about at the beginning, like if there was, neglect, even benign neglect, busy neglect. But then I think sometimes we get stuck there, right? And it's like, oh, I just got to keep processing. And what I realized is like like my childhood pain is basically infinite. Like I could spend my entire life going down that rabbit hole. But the more I focus on my mitochondria and living life and connecting to the people in my life now, the less I really like, I just don't care. It's like it was what it was. I'm moving on. Like and
exactly
so it's like, and I see other people who are still stuck there, right? And they're mentioning every few minutes, and it's like, we can transcend that.
Yes, exactly.
And you have some great keys how.
Well, nourishment, it's all about connecting, right? The nourishment, being able to connect to your environment to seed that safety. And then you take those risks of showing up more vulnerably with those who you do trust so that you can get that feedback. You want that positive mirroring. I mean, that's all the heart math stuff, right? Like we're resonating, we're putting out energy. And so we're only going to be able to repair those early broken and or trauma bonds that we had with our family of origin, whatever was that happened that didn't feel safe, didn't feel good, with connection now, with healthy interaction now with those people we have a good attachment with, or creating new relationships. So we do need that energetic nourishment as well, right? Because that's just the human condition. We are wired to connect. That is part of our physiology, right? That's been shown. Like there's this interesting study that Jim Cohen did. I forget the university he's at on the East Coast, somewhere in Virginia, I think, that I learned about when I was doing a deep dive into emotionally focused therapy with Sue Johnson, who recently passed, who was amazing. I mean, this woman is like just one of my biggest mentors indirectly. Like I didn't work with her directly because she's so, up at the top. But she worked with this gentleman, Jim Cohen, and they did this study where wives would go into this lab setting and they were going to be shocked. And they did a comparison of how they were, like the reaction they had insofar as rate how painful this is with two circumstances, alone and then with their husband holding their hand. And they might have done like a stranger holding their hand. I don't remember what the control was or the other piece, but it was with their husband holding their hand. So they rated the pain so much worse when they were alone than when their husband was holding their hand. So this attachment piece is absolutely vital for us to not work on. I hate that phrase, but you know what I mean, to focus on. Yeah. Because people who had a secure attachment experience when they were younger, it's like a non-issue. Like what? Everything's fine. Like I've got a great marriage, no big deal. Like a great friends, right? Those of us who experienced attachment trauma, it's forever this, again, organic unfolding process of having experiences now that we can take in to inform us of who we are. I'm good, right? I'm good enough. And other people are safe. And I can be vulnerable and express my needs, ask for what I need, set boundaries, right? Because that's a big one. I can set boundaries. I can say no, and I can still be loved, especially for women, right? It's like we take care of everyone else and we're the martyrs, right? Not always, but often. And then there's no space left for me. And now I'm bitter and resentful and angry. But anyways, feeling safe to be in the world that way, right? And experience the pleasure of connection, not in a sexual way, but that's fine too. Of course, I'm not saying that that's not part of it. I'm just saying emotional safety is everything to us. Because the couples I've worked with, as soon as there's the little right that happens, and now I'm in a state of reactivity and I'm protecting myself from the person who's supposed to be the safest person for me and my person in the world. Okay, now we have chronic stress going on, right? So for insecurely
and that
coupled,
reactivity to someone in trauma could be triggered by something very mundane, right? Like it's not necessarily that their partner was a true threat or a true exhibiting cruelty. It just feels like that if we haven't healed to a certain level.
Well, because it's in our nervous system, right? It's in the limbic system. It's an instant limbic appraisal, safe, not safe. That's not in our conscious awareness. Then it sort of bubbles up into fight or flight or freeze. And then it comes up into, oh, wait, what's really going on? Like that's the last piece, is the awareness of, oh, maybe they're just having a bad day, or, it's not that they're going to leave me or that they hate me or whatever it is, but it's all informed by that limbic response of what we have experienced before. So it happens instantaneously. And that's why it's all about the energy and the body language and what we see and hear. Our senses are really what's orienting us to safety, right? So it's tone of voice. Oh, what that tone of voice you had, right? That's the common one. Or the look on their face or their body language is always going to be what sets us off if we haven't fully worked through all of that stuff by getting to the core wound. And again, like we talk about, do we always want to be working on this stuff? No, you don't have to. But you do need to be working on your own sense of energetic safety by, again, circadian rhythm and good relationship practices, right? And taking in the joy and nourishment. Otherwise, these things will come up if you haven't done enough of those things, right?
Right. And I think sometimes, it's, and I've definitely been there. I'm like, oh, for good. I've been at this for 19 years. Like I'm done, but there's always just another layer. And I reached a point where I just was like, okay, I am no longer identifying as a damaged person, right?
Yes.
Like I'm looking around at all these other people who don't identify that way. And I am at least as functional as they are, if not more, because I've done all of this freaking work.
Exactly.
So I'm going to throw that label out. We're good. When people close to me who did the same thing, I'd be like, no more. We're normal. Let's just go with normal and we can grow from here. However, that being said, there are so many fun layers to keep investigating, right? So the circadian rhythm, and so let's put that in place and then see where we are. And then a therapeutic environment with someone who's skilled in that area. Like, let's work through some of that and then see where we are. And then let's go into, the more quantum realm. So circadian rhythms and that connection to mitochondria is very, very well established research, right? Like it is really, as Dr. J. Montgomery says, incontrovertible. Right? Like
I love that word. That's a great word.
Yeah. It's, there's so much robust, both research and anecdotal evidence that we need that. Now, in our corner of the world, we then take it a step further, which most mainstream circadian researchers do not yet, which is into the quantum world. Mm-hmm. And so then once you get there, it's like, okay, so I see how the light was working on a quantum level. I see how, changing my thinking works on a quantum level if thoughts have a vibration. So now let's talk about those like quantum level, like homeopathy, like sound healing, like
perfect.
I don't know what other examples you have.
Well, I actually just recently went to see somebody. This is a good thing about when you follow, right, what your higher self, call it whatever you want, is telling you need to do, that this no longer works for me. I'm going to go this way, no matter how disruptive you think it is or people perceive it to be. Because you know how it is. It's like, oh, this is what I need. Oh, how selfish of you. No, actually, it's a good thing because this is what's healthy for me. So I came here. I'm in this new place, right? And I thought, I had a notion like, I'm going to search out a myofascial specialist, right? And the fascia, as we know, is key insofar as how our body's holding energetic imprints and also how it's affecting our body's ability to do the quantum communication. So lo and behold, 2 blocks from my house, there's a woman who practices, who's got a lot of experience and lots of training, myofascial release by John Barnes, who's one of the big, pioneers in that field. And I found out he's in Sedona, which is like 6 hours from here. I'm like, oh,
and there's a practitioner 2 minutes from you.
Exactly. Who's done so much work. And I went one time when I was in Monterey in California, and it was with a chiropractor, who was the nicest person, but he kind of did this like aggressive, and it was like, ow, it was really painful. and super deep and really fast. And I thought, oh, is that what it is? It's like, and this lady said, it's kind of like Rolfing that approach. She goes, ours is very different. Meredith, it was so gentle, but I felt like I was floating for the last 2 days. She did this one part where she like, I was laying on the massage table and she kind of put one hand on one side of me and the other. She kind of just rocked me back and forth in the middle and then down lower with my knee area. I swear to you, after that, she goes, just feel the energy. My whole body was tingling so much. Like, it's just like bubbles, like you see the soda or the beer or whatever. It's like, I thought, oh my goodness, just from that rocking that she did, it was amazing.
Wow. That is so interesting. And it's funny you say that because Amanda Stankin, she does, I forget what it's called. It's little like gentle rhythmic movement to very similar to what you just described.
Yeah.
But one of them is like you lie on the floor on your tummy and like kind of just wiggle, wiggle just the way you were describing. And my daughter has been doing those movements and I have noticed like a significant shift in her. And one of the things that I think that it was meant to address is birth trauma. And my oldest daughter had like, she had to go to the NICU and all that kind of stuff. And so it's just like these little, and again, like a small, gentle movement can have, like we were saying earlier, this outsized effect.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. I think for the energetic quantum approach, like you're saying, those are where the gold is, right? Because we have to, she was so intuitive. She was so grounded. She just, and so confident that my body was just like butter. It's like, okay. Right. And she would notice my breathing. So I do want to approach or make space for how I'm breathing. But it was my first session. She's like, yeah, you have some constriction. I'm like, well, of course. I'm not holding much, just a little. So yes, I want to continue to work on that. She says it helps open up and make space in your body. Right. Of course, because it's going to release whatever it is. If it's terror, if it's dread, I don't know. It was just whatever that stuff is that's residual. That's my body still is holding. I don't know why it does that. It's just training. It's conditioning. It's like, oh, we may not be safe. Let's just stay on guard. Yes. Until we are absolutely certain. So all the pieces like homeopathy addresses again at the root level of your vital force at the electron level. And it's a like cures like. So whatever your total symptom picture is, whatever substance would energetically elicit those same symptoms, we match the remedy with what you're presenting with. So it's really amazing and complex and profound. But again, I took the remedy that was about, is this relationship really working for me? And lo and behold, I made a decision. It just kind of all unfolded. And I thought, okay, I'm moving on after 19 years. And so, and again, it doesn't have to be a big deal. Like, we're still friendly. It's just that I realize that this is what I need to do. And it doesn't have to be like you're burning up your life, right? You're blowing it all up. It can be easy. That's my spiritual mentor's, one of her many amazing mottos is it gets to be easy. That was not in my vocabulary, Meredith, my whole life. It was like, it's really hard and I have to work really hard and I'm suffering. And it's like, really? No, it isn't like that. So speaking of quantum in the mindset field, right? That's part of it. And our bodies are holding all of those beliefs. So with the myofascial release, it's going to access what I have. It's not that I've not been able to, but it's just not in my awareness or the timing isn't right or whatever. But she'll be able to help my body to release and then the energy can flow. So yes.
Wow. So it's like some of this stuff is being held inside of us by our cells, by our nervous system. And so until we find a way to access that, it's going to be in there, which means it can be triggered at some point by something.
Exactly. Yes. Or we
Okay.
make decisions based on it, or we avoid opportunities, or right, this little niggly
avoid
health thing.
opportunities. Yeah. That's a big one.
Yeah. Yeah.
All my imposter syndromers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
oh no. And that's sorry. Because the thought I always have. Ourselves. Yeah. Right. Because my thing is always like, if an opportunity comes to me, I will immediately start thinking of someone who'd be better. Like, oh, you shouldn't do it with me. You should do it with that person. You should, right? It's like,
exactly.
Okay, but they asked you. Just show up. Just show up. Just give it a go.
Well, then when we have the energy flowing, we have the discernment, right? The awareness. Our brain is optimized. Our senses are optimized about what's really in our best interest. That discernment isn't muddled by that blocks the block in our flow of energy. That's how I see it.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it. Right. So even though that the older idea, the trauma informed idea, the trauma triggered idea of like, stay away, shut down, don't go there, don't try it, don't do it. Once we've got our flow on, there's also space for some higher aspect to come in and be like, really? Maybe we could try it. Maybe it will be okay.
Yes.
And how do we need it to look and be structured in order to feel safe doing it?
Right.
And I want to end on this idea of it being easy. I love that so much. Because I think I'll use myself as an example, right? Like those early days when I was like, wow, I really need help. I thought I could do life on my own as I am, and turns out not so much. It was hard. It was hard. And so I think, I was referencing being like, oh, I just don't want to, I'm done healing, I'm good, is because in my mind, I'm tying it back to how hard it was in the beginning. But what we're talking about is fun. Like that experience you had with the myofascial release sounded beautiful. Right? Walking outside in the morning is fun.
Exactly.
So tell us, activate in us this awareness that healing can be fun and easy.
Well, I think if you follow what it is that you want and trust that, because I think sometimes what we think we want are things that help us avoid who we are supposed to be, right? The numbing, the distraction. So what do you really want? What would feel good in your body? What are those little nudges? What are those little inklings? What is it that lights you up and gives you that spark of vitality and joy? That's what we need to be focused on. And that is what offers us healing. That is the healing, right?
Right.
It's being able to be more of yourself, more of your light, and not living as a constricted version of yourself because of fear. What will people think of me if I'm actually all myself, right? What will people think of me if I am wearing blue blockers in the store, or whatever the case is, right? It's how can you feel that conviction of that being yourself is your God-given right? And feeling good is actually okay, because I think some of us who've especially experienced a lot of strife, it's like, I don't have the right to feel good. I should be suffering. Otherwise, I don't know. It's just, we have these crazy beliefs, right? And so it gets to be easy. You get to choose every day, every moment, what you want to do so that you're actually creating a life, right? You're sending a message to the universe that you're worthy, that you want to feel good. And then that's the ether part of it that I love so much, that hopefully Carrie's going to bring more of us to us, because it's really complicated to read about the science behind that. I was like, oh, but that what we're resonating at, that the emotions, the thoughts that we have go out into the ether, right? And then it presents us with those things that we need. And I know that might sound really woo-woo or new age or whatever, but I do believe that because it worked the way it did before. Was I thought life was hard, and it was. So maybe if I think life is going to be easy, it will be more easy.
Yes. Yes. And the things, like you were just saying, like what you needed showed up.
Yes, exactly.
that
Exactly.
myofascial practitioner who, you know, if you hadn't been open to that, you would have lived down the street from her and never have known of her existence.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, we can all think of times when we've been in that state and a synchronicity has arisen. Something,
Yep.
you know, even just a post showing up in our Instagram feed and we're like, huh,
Yes.
what's that?
Yes.
Or, you know, there's so many different ways to have it happen when we're open to it.
Yeah. Last thing I want to say is that I have a dear client. So some of the people I've been working with a long time, I'm still with a select few of them, who's bilingual in Spanish. And I'll say, oh, that's an amazing coincidence. She goes, no. There's no coincidences. It's diosidencia. So it's a God incident. You know what I mean? It's the divine. I just thought, oh my God, I love that so much.
I love that.
Yes.
I love it. And, you know, I've surrounded myself with this perspective for a long time. And I feel like each year that goes by, it becomes a bit more true, right? We can choose to live in the dimension, so to speak, that we would like to live in and find the people who want to be there as well and build the things and create the things that we would like to have there. And, yeah, so just to finalize on, because so we're living in the United States, and even if you don't, I've heard there are like a record number of elections happening all over the world this year. It's just like like election bonanza. So this is probably relevant to almost everybody listening. And what I find in what we know about election time is, right, like there is a serious fight for our energy and our attention and our emotional buy-in. I would call it even manipulation.
For sure.
And so let's just end by like talking about sort of just how to like stay, engaged enough to make a choice when you need to, but out of that fray and not have these outer forces sort of dictating our emotional and energetic climate.
Well, you mean a guideline? Is that what you're talking about? I would say that if you find yourself spending more time on social media, reading about the latest BS, I would say that's time to dial it back. And I'm including myself in that, because it's addictive. It is out there for a reason. Whatever you believe, you need to know why you're doing it. It's like, how is this serving me right now to expose myself to this information? And I can guarantee you that this is probably not helpful in any way. Like, how is this enriching your life? Is it informing you? Is it helping you make a decision? No, you've already made the decision probably. So, right. It's just like my team. Yay. Okay. So what's that giving you? So, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but I mean, most people probably realize what's going on as far as in, the agenda. But I think that I'm going to choose to spend less time on it and focus on going outside more, because me being inside looking at what's the latest, drama is completely not helpful. So you're right. There's a lot of intensity around that. And I think we can lose ourselves in it. And then there's half of the year of your life is basically wasted, right? We're not getting anything nourishing from that. It's just pure entertainment and or drama that riles us up. And then we're not focused on what really matters. So I think that thank you, Meredith. I'm going to put myself on a time limit of saying, okay, I can have 5 minutes to check out what's going on. Because I don't watch the news, but I am on YouTube. I think it's the same thing. People say they don't watch the news. It's like, come on, you're still looking at stuff like, it's not going to pass anymore. Just cut yourself off.
No. I get it through Twitter, and it's definitely filtered. I'm not getting the pure unadulterated hit from the legacy media, but it's filtered through other people's takes, but it's still still the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And I did notice, especially like living in the United States, I find, just like circling back to your expertise in attachment, right? Like I find more so in this country than anywhere else, because I've lived in a few different places. I'm Canadian. And like everyone gets super heated around issues. But I find there is a unique American thing where people are really personally identified with a specific political party.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in other countries, you might be identified with as, you know, one perspective or another, but you're not like from birth told that your loyalty lies in this specific area, and then you feel like if you're breaching that, you're betraying yourself, your tribe. And then if you're in a family where people have decided to go in different directions, people feel bereft.
Well, it can
like
create
they're feeling like
yeah.
they're losing their family.
Well, and that happened
it feels like a betrayal. Is
right.
Like a personal betrayal, not just like we disagree politically, like a personal betrayal.
Right. It's interesting that you put the attachment lens on that, because it's again, safe, not safe. The message is, oh, if you believe in this group or party or whatever, or this, like the whole, jab thing, it's like, oh, you're not on board with that. Oh, now I can't have anything to do with you because it's so threatening. Now you're not my person. You're not one of my people. So that's the tribal aspect. I think part of that's just human nature, but the fear, when we tap into the fear, and that's how they're manipulating us, right? The fear factor, and pitting us against each other. I think that's what's really going on. And so we lose our humanity. I think we resort more to, or we regress more into our animalistic tendencies of that, tribal thing, and fighting against each other because there's some sort of life risk or threat that's so big, but there's not, right? It's not like that. I think that's what we have been led to believe. And so not being able to see the other human as a human, and instead looking at them as this other, that's when we start to do that kind of thing. And now you're not safe because I don't agree with your beliefs or behavior, is really, really scary. And that's, like you mentioned, elections, that's what I'm going to be noticing this year. But again, Meredith, it's like, we have to take a breath and not fall into this fear trap because it's ubiquitous. Like it's all over the place, right? And so grounding ourselves every day in what really matters in our relationships, in nurturing ourselves, is going to be essential. And staying connected to your personal divinity or whatever that is for you is going to be essential in order to move into whatever next iteration of our human existence is going to be, whatever timeline that is, right? It's essential.
Yes. And important, because I think I sometimes feel like, no, but I have to be super engaged in this. Like but why do I think that?
Yes, exactly. Because what will happen if you don't? That's what we need to. We need to ask ourselves more questions out of compassion and curiosity without the judgment. Because as soon as like the judgment, if it's right or wrong, comes in, then we lose ourselves. Yes. Because now I have to take a side instead of being curious and looking at it from just more of a consciousness perspective.
Yes. Yeah. And to stay in that place. Because you can take like the counterpoint perspective or the minority perspective and then still get sucked into that and be like, people will get offended if you're not on board with every conspiracy theory that they believe, right? Like it's like everyone, like we just do it. That's just what we do.
Yep. And it's endless. Yeah.
Right. So it's like, okay, yeah, it's right. Exactly. It's like childhood pain. It's infinite. And it'll never stop. Politics is like, even when you win, you lose, because you just kick up a whole new, whole new round of people getting at you. Okay. I did not plan to go there. I've never once brought up this topic, but what you shared, I just felt was so, relevant to how to approach that, like, because we're talking about the challenges of day-to-day life, and navigating our current form of democracy is one of those challenges.
Yes, it is. Yes.
All right.
Well, thank you so
Heather,
much,
thank you
Meredith.
so much. Yeah. And just quickly, how and where can people find you?
Yeah, so on Instagram, it's at Heather Crimson, like the color red, and my website is enlightenedmood.com.
Okay. And I will put both of those links in the show notes. But the fastest, easiest way is if you're on Instagram at Heather, Heather Crimson, like crimson red.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And all your links are there.
Yes.
It's your beautiful one-to-one work, your community, all the things. Oh,
yes.
And Heather also hosts a podcast.
Yes,
so go listen to that.
The Quantum Connection. Yes, the Quantum Connection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Quantum Connection with Vanessa, who I also just interviewed. You guys are fabulous. I'm so excited you're doing that.
Thank you. Yes, it's fantastic. All right. Thanks so much, Meredith.
Thanks, Heather.
Woohoo! You made it to the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploratory adventure into new realms. Your energy and support are building a different world, and I am so grateful to be on this journey with you. Take care, and thanks.